There are moments in life when you can feel the desire inside you pulsing with quiet intensity, like a truth waiting to be lived, yet the world around you remains still. You try to move forward, you visualize, you meditate, you whisper intentions to the universe with sincerity, and still the reality before you does not change. In those silent hours when the weight of stagnation presses more heavily than the tasks of the day, something inside begins to wonder if the universe has forgotten your name. But often, the universe has not turned away. Instead, your energy has slipped into a quiet misalignment, a subtle internal knot that interrupts the flow between you and what you are calling in. This is where today's journey begins. Not in chasing miracles or forcing outcomes, but in noticing the unseen friction inside your own field. The most powerful transformations do not always begin with dramatic rituals or sudden breakthroughs. They begin in the stillness of self-recognition, where you notice that you have been holding on too tightly, waiting for life to move before you allow yourself to breathe again. When we operate from a place of longing mixed with tension, the signal we send is contradictory. The mind speaks abundance, but the nervous system broadcasts scarcity, fear, or impatience. That internal conflict, invisible yet potent, becomes the unseen barrier. Today we will dissolve that barrier, not by effort but by alignment, not by demanding from the universe, but by learning how to settle into the frequency where receiving becomes natural. This is not about perfection. It is about a simple return to coherence and a return to truth. As we move forward, give yourself permission to soften, to listen, and to step into a space where manifestation is not a struggle, but a consequence of inner clarity. Now take a breath, let your heart steady, and step with me into the subtle shift that changes everything. There are seasons when life feels like a room you cannot quite enter. Even though you stand just beyond the threshold, you sense the possibility, you feel the pull of a future calling your name, yet your steps fall into an invisible accumulation of resistance. In those moments, manifestation does not fail because of a lack of desire or a shortage of action, but because part of you is still holding a quiet tension you have not fully seen. It is subtle, almost shy, like a whisper beneath the louder voice of optimism. Yet it shapes your energy far more powerfully than the affirmations you repeat or the visualizations you create. The universe does not respond to your words alone. It responds to the vibration beneath them. Imagine standing at the edge of a body of water. You drop a pebble and watch the ripples move outward, each one carrying the memory of the initial point of contact. That ripple is your energetic signal. If the hand that releases the pebble trembles with doubt, longing, fear, or unacknowledged grief, the pattern that spreads will carry the echo of that trembling. When that happens, it is not a failure. It is not proof that you are broken or incapable. It is simply evidence that you are human and that the body and the mind do not always move in unison toward the same horizon. Many people believe manifestation begins in thought, but true creation begins in coherence. When your beliefs, emotions, body, and intention move in a unified direction, life responds with a matching harmony. Yet when a part of you hesitates, when a wound clings to an old narrative, when your nervous system remains braced for disappointment, the signal becomes fragmented. It is like trying to tune into a frequency while another channel hums beneath the one you want to hear. You may speak abundance, but a deeper layer of you still clings to the safety of familiar scarcity, because the unknown, even when promising, still carries uncertainty. This internal contradiction is not weakness. It is protection. The mind learns through experience. The heart remembers every time hope felt like a risk. Somewhere in your past, perhaps without you ever noticing, you learned to soften your dreams so that loss would not sting as sharply. That learned self-preservation still echoes through your energy field, shaping your vibration long after the original moment has passed. It is not the universe withholding. It is your inner world whispering, not yet. Not until it feels safe. Not until your nervous system trusts that receiving will not break you. There is a quiet truth in this. Manifestation is not only the art of calling in what you want, but the discipline of becoming someone who can hold it. The most powerful shift is rarely dramatic. It begins in recognizing the subtle ways you brace against future pain, the ways you stay half open to possibility, while keeping one foot rooted in what feels known. The world responds to what you are willing to allow yourself to believe you deserve, not just intellectually, but emotionally and somatically. When your body remains tethered to old patterns, the future struggles to take shape in your hands. To step into a new energy, you do not need to suppress fear or force optimism. Instead, you meet the hesitation gently. You give space to the quiet parts of yourself that still remember disappointment. You acknowledge the exhaustion that comes from trying so hard to be strong, hopeful, positive. Sometimes the greatest act of manifestation is allowing yourself to exhale, to stop fighting the current long enough to notice where your energy actually rests. Awareness loosens what effort cannot. When you feel into the tension rather than pushing against it, the knot begins to release. The body relaxes. The frequency shifts. This is where the simplicity enters. Manifestation does not break open through strain. It blooms in the absence of inner resistance. When your emotional world feels safe enough to surrender the old narrative, your energy naturally rises. Gratitude becomes easier. Possibility feels less theoretical and more immediate. You begin to sense life moving with you instead of around you. You trust the timing rather than fearing the stillness. The world opens one subtle doorway at a time, responding to your grounded presence rather than your urgency. In this state, opportunities do not need to be chased. They arrive through alignment. You act not from desperation, but from clarity. You no longer measure your worth by what arrives, because your energy no longer depends on external confirmation. You become able to hold desire without attachment, faith without tension, ambition without strain. That is the place where manifestation becomes a natural extension of your inner landscape, rather than an effortful project. The shift does not announce itself loudly. It feels more like a sigh of recognition, a quiet yes rising from within you, a release of lifelong vigilance. You are no longer trying to carve a future by force. You are allowing a future that matches your frequency to meet you. Every soul who reaches this point has walked through doubt, impatience, disappointment, and longing. None of those emotions disqualify you. They initiate you. They shape the depth from which your transformation will rise. To notice the energetic error is not to judge yourself for it, but to understand that you are evolving from survival energy into creative energy. When that shift stabilizes, manifestation is not a task. It becomes your natural state, because the universe mirrors coherence. And coherence is born not from perfection, but from honesty, presence, and the gentle agreement with yourself that you are ready to receive without bracing for collapse. There comes a point in any inner journey when the desire to evolve meets the quiet exhaustion of trying. You have reached for new realities, opened books, listened to teachings, repeated affirmations in the stillness of late nights, hoping each word might become a bridge to another life. Yet underneath all this effort, there is often a soft trembling, the subtle ache of fearing that nothing will change. This feeling is not failure. It is the threshold where true transformation begins. When an individual has tried every technique, yet still feels disconnected from the flow of manifestation, the mind often assumes the universe is withholding. In truth, it is usually the body waiting for permission to trust again. What many never realize is that manifestation responds not to force but to inner safety. You cannot radiate openness while your nervous system quietly protects you from disappointment. There is a moment in every spiritual seeker's path when the most powerful step is not intensifying effort, but allowing the inner world to breathe. In the work of transformation, silence is not absence, it is integration. Stillness is not stagnation, it is recalibration. When you stop trying to outrun your fears and instead sit beside them, you create the internal space where alignment emerges on its own rhythm. There is a fundamental truth modern spirituality sometimes overlooks. Energy cannot harmonize where self-rejection lives. If a part of you still feels unworthy of receiving, that part will pull you back into familiar patterns, not to punish you, but to protect you from what it believes may hurt. The mind can declare confidence, yet if the body remembers moments where hope collapsed, it will guard itself. This guarding is not resistance in the traditional sense. It is a form of internal loyalty, holding you to what once felt safer than expansion. In that space, manifestation feels distant, not because you lack power, but because a part of your energy is still living in an older chapter of your story. The shift begins when you allow your inner world to be seen without judgment, when you become willing to notice the subtle clenching around your dreams. When you recognize that longing does not always mean alignment, sometimes it means you are still carrying wounds that shaped how you learned to desire in the first place. This is the moment the journey deepens, moving from intellectual intention to emotional attunement. When thought aligns with emotion, when the heart no longer negotiates with doubt, the frequency of your being changes. It is not loud, it is not dramatic. It feels more like recognition, as if you are remembering a version of yourself who always knew how to receive. Manifestation becomes real when desire is paired with a nervous system that trusts the future. To cultivate this trust, one often begins by exploring the places where inner tension hides. It might appear as a flutter in the chest when imagining success, a tightening in the jaw when considering a future partner, or a subtle sinking in the stomach at the thought of abundance. These sensations are not obstacles, they are invitations. They ask, can you hold a vision without shrinking? Can you allow possibility to touch you without flinching? Can you soften into a life you have not yet lived? In spiritual language, this is often called surrender. Yet surrender is misunderstood. It does not mean giving up desire or abandoning effort. It means releasing the vigilance that has been guarding you from disappointment. It means trusting that life does not punish hope. It means letting go of the belief that you must earn what is already aligned with your nature. When you stop trying to manipulate outcomes to feel safe, you create space for life to meet you where you stand. This level of alignment is not achieved through force. It emerges through presence. When you learn to witness your inner world with tenderness, the parts of you that once clung to survival soften. The heart begins to relax. The nervous system steadies. The mind stops bracing for loss. And when that happens, desire is no longer a battleground between hope and fear. It becomes a quiet compass pointing you home. As this coherence builds, manifestation shifts from performing techniques to embodying truth. You do not need to convince the universe of your readiness. You simply become someone who no longer doubts your right to receive. In this state, abundance is not a prize, it is a reflection. Love is not a miracle, it is a resonance. Opportunities do not arrive as exceptions. They arrive as companions to your energetic state. You begin to see that the universe never withheld anything. It only waited for the moment when receiving would not feel like danger. The real transformation arrives quietly. It lives not in dramatic affirmations, but in the way your breath settles. It lives not in forcing belief, but in the way your chest opens when you imagine a new future. It lives in the stillness between thoughts, where alignment feels less like effort and more like remembering who you are beneath the layers of fear and conditioning. When you reach this state, you do not chase signs. Synchronicity becomes a language. You do not strive to manifest. Your life becomes a mirror of your inner coherence. And so, the journey forward is not about proving worth, chasing timelines, or forcing spiritual achievement. It is about returning to the truth that you were always designed to receive. It is about letting the heart trust again. It is about honoring the pace at which your inner world unfolds. When you learn to soften into your becoming rather than demand it, you invite life to unfold in harmony rather than tension. This is where manifestation moves from concept to experience. It is where abundance stops feeling like a distant promise and begins to rise within you as a natural consequence of your alignment. You do not reach for it anymore. It reaches for you. There is a particular turning point on the path of manifestation that few speak about with enough depth. The moment when effort becomes interference, when striving begins to separate you from the reality you wish to experience. Many people believe manifestation requires constant focus, constant intensity, a relentless mental grip on the outcome. But truth lives in a softer place. Reality does not bend because you strain toward it. It bends when your inner state matches the horizon you are stepping into. Effort is often born from fear, a hidden belief that without force, the desired life will slip away. Yet in the energetic world, force signals lack. It communicates that you are not already aligned with the very thing you claim to call in. A clenched fist cannot receive. A tense mind cannot perceive subtle guidance. A heart bracing for disappointment cannot dissolve into trust. There comes a moment where evolution requires you to shift from doing manifestation to becoming someone for whom manifestation is natural. That shift begins in the breath, in the nervous system, in the quiet willingness to release the battlefield of self-pressure. When you stop trying to earn what is already aligned with who you are becoming, energy stabilizes, vision sharpens, the internal noise quiets, and you begin to hear the direction life has been offering you all along. This is not complacency, it is maturity. The highest form of manifestation is not obsession with the future, but presence so complete that the future flows from you rather than to you. When you deepen into this state, the world around you begins to respond differently. Opportunities that once felt distant start to appear in gentle yet meaningful patterns. Conversations align. Timing becomes precise. Synchronicity feels less like coincidence and more like recognition. You begin to understand that life was never withholding. It was waiting for your frequency to settle. The universe does not operate on urgency. It operates on resonance. When you exhale the anxious need to control timing, timing begins to work for you rather than against you. You move from chasing alignment to living in it. This shift does not mean abandoning desire. Desire remains essential, but desire becomes less frantic, more sovereign. It stands not as a plea to the universe, but as a declaration of identity. You stop hoping for a life change and instead accept that you are the person through whom that life expresses itself. In this phase, there is no rush, no grasping, no emotional negotiation with possibility. There is simply direction, clarity, and a grounded certainty that your energy is already building the bridge to what you claim. There may still be moments of doubt, because doubt is not the enemy. It is a signal that a part of you is still learning safety. When doubt rises, you do not fight it. You allow it to surface and settle. Energy becomes coherent not through suppression, but through transparency. And as coherence strengthens, your actions take on a different tone. They are not fueled by desperation or deadlines. They are guided by intuition, timing, and internal alignment. You become less interested in proving your worth and more committed to inhabiting it. The world mirrors that shift with a quiet precision that feels almost spiritual in its consistency. Eventually, manifestation becomes less about attracting and more about remembering. The future you have been asking for is not a destination. It is a frequency. When you embody it, the physical world reorganizes to match your internal state. And the most extraordinary part is that when that alignment arrives, you feel less like you achieved something and more like you returned to something you always knew. There is no triumphant explosion of emotion, only a calm recognition. Of course it came. Of course it was always mine. Of course this is who I am. There is a subtle space in manifestation work where impatience masquerades as ambition and urgency disguises itself as commitment. Many believe that desiring something intensely is proof of readiness, but in truth, intensity often reveals an absence of trust. Wanting is not the same as allowing. When a dream feels fragile in your hands, when you monitor every sign, every shift, every moment of stillness, as if it might indicate failure, you are not manifesting from alignment. You are manifesting from survival, and survival energy cannot create expansion because it is rooted in fear rather than truth. This unspoken tension is where many seekers unconsciously block what they desire. They speak in affirmations, yet their nervous system waits for disappointment. They visualize the life they want, yet beneath that vision lives a quiet dread that the universe might choose differently. They declare faith while secretly rehearsing loss, preparing themselves emotionally for the outcome they fear. This internal rehearsal creates friction in the field. It divides intention from embodiment, desire from readiness. The universe does not respond to words alone. It responds to the energy beneath them, to the frequency coded in your emotional body, not just your conscious thoughts. When you step into true alignment, the need to rush dissolves. You begin to sense that manifestation is not something you chase, but something you tune into. You stop bargaining with time because time is no longer the proof of your worth or the judge of your destiny. You become rooted in the knowing that what is aligned is not fragile. It does not disappear because of silence or pause or delay. The universe does not withhold to punish you. It pauses to calibrate you. It waits for your frequency to mature enough to sustain the life you are calling in. This shift is not passive. It requires courage to release urgency and trust the rhythm of your own becoming. It requires strength to notice where the impulse to force arises and choose instead to breathe, to soften, to return to presence. Trust is not the absence of desire. It is the willingness to desire without collapsing into fear when outcomes are not immediate. It is the recognition that life rearranges itself according to energetic coherence, not emotional intensity. When you stop demanding proof from the universe and start embodying the emotion of having, you step into the field where creation responds naturally to you. In this space, you will notice something profound. Your energy becomes quieter, not weaker. Stillness begins to feel safer than effort. Silence becomes fertile rather than frightening. Instead of chasing signs, you begin to receive them. Instead of analyzing every moment for progress, you feel progress happening beneath perception, like roots strengthening before a seed breaks soil. Life begins to feel less like a puzzle to solve and more like a frequency to maintain. And the more consistently you hold that frequency, the more effortlessly outcomes align. There is also a humility in this stage, not the kind that diminishes you, but the kind that understands the universe does not operate on your schedule. It operates on your readiness. When you acknowledge that you are not being denied but prepared, disappointment loses its grip. You stop fearing pause, you stop interpreting waiting as rejection. You recognize waiting as refinement, as integration, as the strengthening of the energetic foundation beneath your desire. And in that recognition, your emotional landscape shifts from agitation to expectancy, from tension to reverence. Some describe this shift as surrender, but surrender is often misunderstood. It is not giving up on what you want. It is no longer needing to wrestle with the unfolding of what you want. It is choosing participation without desperation. It is the merging of desire with peace, intention with patience, belief with breath. It is the state where receiving becomes as natural as wanting once was. And when you stand there, you realize the most powerful form of manifestation is not magnetizing reality through force, but aligning so deeply that reality has no choice but to respond. Eventually, you begin to notice that your identity transforms alongside your desires. You stop telling the universe what you want from a place of lack and start choosing who you are from a place of inner certainty. You no longer live in anticipation of arrival. You live in the becoming that guarantees arrival. In this phase, the future moves toward you with a pace that feels both effortless and inevitable. You do not rush. You recognize you are already on the timeline where what you desire exists, and your task is not to chase it but to remain aligned with it. And when it finally arrives, whether through a moment of quiet realization, a sudden opportunity, or a shift that feels almost mystical, you do not feel lucky. You feel aligned. You do not feel surprised. You feel recognized. Because what arrives is not a gift you hoped for, but a life that matches the frequency you learned to hold. It is not fate, it is resonance, and resonance never rushes. It arrives exactly when you become the person who can receive without fear, without urgency, without doubt. Only certainty, only presence, only truth. There is a point in every transformational journey when awareness turns into embodiment, when concepts become lived experience, and when effort gives way to presence. What you have explored throughout this process is not simply a method of manifesting, but a reorientation of who you are at your energetic core. Manifestation begins as desire, evolves into belief, and ultimately matures into identity. You are no longer someone reaching for a different reality. You are someone growing into the frequency that makes that reality inevitable. To arrive here is not to achieve perfection or eliminate doubt forever. It is to learn the art of returning to coherence, to trust, to the quiet equilibrium within where your energy, your intention, and your sense of self move in the same direction. There will still be moments when the old impulse surfaces, when urgency knocks at your awareness, when impatience whispers that the future should move faster. That is not regression. It is evidence that you are human. The difference now is that you recognize these impulses as echoes, not truth. You have cultivated a new internal reference point, a grounded, receptive, self-assured state where you meet life not with tension, but with trust. From here, you do not chase signs, you sense alignment. You do not beg timing to arrive. You rise into the version of yourself that timing responds to. This is the true nature of manifestation, not commanding the universe, but learning the elegant precision with which the universe responds when you stand in your authentic energetic signature. And so as this chapter of guidance completes, something deeper begins. You are stepping into a life where receiving is not a miracle, but a reflection. where your worthiness is not a negotiation, but a natural state, where timing is not a threat, but a partner. Let this be your reminder. You do not manifest by force. You manifest by becoming, and you are already in motion. You are already shifting. You are already expanding into the reality that once felt distant. Trust the unfolding. You are not chasing your future anymore. You are meeting it. Before you go, sit with this question. If everything you asked for began unfolding quietly from this moment forward, would you allow yourself to believe it? If this journey resonates with your spirit, and you felt alignment rising through you as you listened, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you continue to receive guidance that strengthens this transformation, deepens your awareness, and keeps you in the frequency of expansion and creation. Your evolution deserves companionship, consistency, and a space where your growth is recognized and supported. And do not leave yet. Continue your expansion by watching the next video appearing on your screen now. Let this momentum carry you deeper, layer by layer, into the life that is already forming around you. The shift has begun. Stay with it. Continue your evolution.